If you ask any football player or any football fan the question, who has the simplest position on the team, they most likely tell you the punter. Heck, some players don't even know the name of the punter on their team. But what about punters who are not only one of the best at the position in the league, but also a good locker room guy, one of the boys? Additionally, what about a punter who has become a wealthy businessman in his career after football? These are the qualities you'll find in the one and only Pat McAfee. From Pittsburgh suburb with a population of 25,000 people to an ESPN and daily media audience of millions, this is the epic rise of one of the NFL's most largest personalities, Pat McAfee. Pat's origin to what he calls the dumbest life of all time begins in Plum, Pennsylvania, about 20 miles outside of the Pittsburgh metropolitan area. Pat took an early liking to sports in his youth. He was a multi-sport athlete playing football, soccer, and volleyball. Pat has noted several times that he thought it was soccer that would be his primary vehicle to becoming a professional athlete, until he went to attend West Virginia University as a kicker in 2005. During Pat's time at West Virginia, the Mountaineers enjoyed incredible success as they won 11 games in each of their first 3 seasons of Pat's tenure in college. Pat completed 4 seasons at West Virginia and left college as the school's all-time scoring leader with 384 points scored, which still stands to this day. After a successful college tenure, Pat was selected in the 7th round, 222nd overall, by the Indianapolis Colts during the 2009 NFL Draft. Pat joined a successful football program in college and was selected by another successful program in the NFL, or should I say, program. Pat's rookie year was a fun ride as the Peyton Manning-led Indianapolis Colts won their first 14 games and ended the season with a 14-2 record, with Super Bowl aspirations in mind. The Colts would have the #1 seed in the AFC that year and had convincing wins in their first 2 playoff games. Pat would then kick off the Super Bowl a couple weeks later, but ultimately the Colts fell short and lost in the big game against Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints. But if you ask Pat, he'd still tell you kicking off a Super Bowl as a rookie is a pretty cool feeling, despite not being able to win the ring. Unfortunately, Pat and the Colts weren't able to find the same success. Pat would go to the Super Bowl as a rookie, only to never return for the remainder of his career. Pat went on to have a great NFL career, including a Pro Bowl appearance and All-Pro honors in 2014, as well as another Pro Bowl appearance in 2016. He would be the subject to a few NFL highlights that will be remembered forever, including belting Trindon Holiday out of bounds on a kickoff return, recovering an onside kick to himself, or even being part of what is probably the worst NFL football play in history. Pat decided to hang up the cleats in 2016 to pursue other interests. Pat retired from the NFL after 8 seasons, all with the Indianapolis Colts, earning a reported estimate over $15 million. Not bad for a kid from a small Pittsburgh suburb. You might think that's quite a bit of money for kicking a ball, and you'd be right, it is. But what Pat does after his football career is what will be talked about forever. As mentioned earlier, Pat had other interests to pursue after he retired from the NFL. The first thing he did was comedy. Pat actually did a couple of comedy shows for charity during his final years in the NFL. The other interest Pat explored was podcasting and other avenues of sports broadcasting. This media interest ultimately led him to teaming up with Barstool Sports, and Pat would appear on their platform via podcasts and other content. Pat would stay with Barstool until August of 2018, where he decided to go on his own and build his own brand with the internet presence he was starting to accumulate. Pat would then turn his attention to his own show, called The Pat McAfee Show. His on-air charisma, wittiness, humor, and comedic relief began to catch on with the sports-loving public. The product that Pat would display on a daily basis simply was not what you could find on NFL Network, ESPN, and other major TV network at the time. Pat was purely focused on being himself, not having a fake TV personality, not dressing up in suits all day, and most importantly, having the creative freedom that most in the media don't have. Pat built his crew around him based on personality, and you can tell that each of the members on his team gave great synergy with each other, even the most toxic of them all, AJ Hawk. Pat and his show started making big noise, and that earned Pat and the gang a reported $120 million 4-year sponsorship deal with FanDuel Sportsbook in 2021. Things really started to ramp up for the crew at this point, and they were really having big guests on the show and high engagement. But the FanDuel deal began to spur bigger conversations about what the show could be. Pat's voice and platform was so strong, the show would feature multi-time NFL MVP Aaron Rodgers every Tuesday during the NFL season, a feature that has spanned multiple seasons and still continues on today. Pat was quickly becoming the gold standard for sports media, so much so that other shows tried to copy his ideas. Whatever happened to the Micah Parsons Tuesdays anyway? Pat's show was turning into a media giant that was getting bigger by the day. He even became a fixture in the WWE universe and had a match at WrestleMania. During the NFL offseason, you can find Pat ringside commentating on WWE's Monday Night Raw events alongside Michael Cole. Pat used to commentate on WWE Friday Night SmackDown shows as well. To be a popular figure in both WWE and NFL is a pretty cool thing. I mean, come on, how many people can say they took a Stone Cold Stunner on wrestling's biggest stage? It seemed like every month they were hitting some kind of milestone and elevating their game in some way. Pat's growth even led them to change offices, where he bought a church and tailored it for him and his crew to conduct the daily show. They named it the Thunderdome. Then after a couple more years, the real McAfee boom occurred. After teasing it for a couple of weeks, it was announced in May 2023 that Pat would partner up with the worldwide leader, ESPN. This union caused a lot of controversy. Many people would call McAfee a sellout for joining ESPN. It caused so much anger amongst their own community that people claimed they'd never watch or be fans of the show again. Most of his audience was just worried they'd change the structure of the show to adhere to possible censorship that ESPN and major networks are known to have. But Pat promised his creative control was not relinquished. Since joining the network, Pat has also joined College Game Day on Saturday mornings and continues to stream his show daily on multiple ESPN platforms. Overall, the average viewer would probably say that Pat has kept his promise to keep the personality of the show the same. The show has not changed in any obvious way, still the same old stoogery, other than the fact that Pat and the boys are able to do more on-site shows at various locations. This was a big move for sports journalism. For the last decade, sports journalism has been mostly the debate format, where an analyst or former player makes outrageous statements and they debate with another co-host about their opinions, ultimately not providing real value, and that style of entertainment was growing stale amongst the sports public. You can tell it was all over-exaggerated, scripted, disingenuous, and structured. People were beginning to desire the raw, honest, and humorous coverage that Pat and his crew provided. ESPN knew they had to revive a dying breed of sports journalism, so they called on the biggest name in the business, Pat McAfee. Now, the FanDuel deal was reported when it was signed, but no one really knows how much Pat is getting paid while being on ESPN. Many reports say Pat actually took a discount to join ESPN, but he has laughed at that statement on his show. Pat knows the value of the content and the engine he's built. He's also very grateful for his team that's been there with him as the show has grown. He represents himself in all negotiations and has mentioned many times there's a lot of false reporting on his ESPN deal out there. Pat made about $15 million while punting in the NFL for 8 seasons. He's had his own show for approximately 6 to 7 full years at the time of this video, and has earned multiple times more than his NFL career earnings. Who really knows how much Pat has made from his show? But we can speculate. It's a lot. Pat has paved the way for other former and present athletes to start podcasts and shows of their own. Pat's success was truly the green light for others to model after. Pat McAfee is arguably now the face of ESPN. He's everywhere. From a football kicker growing up in Little Plum, Pennsylvania, to playing big-time college football, to playing for one of the most successful NFL franchises, to now being a family man who also changed the sports media landscape forever. People love him, people hate him, but you can't deny Pat has done everything his way and has revolutionized the way we take in sports. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to see more NFL content similar to this, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the next one.